In the dim haze of dawn on April 1, 1945, off the rugged shores of Okinawa, the air trembled with the distant thunder of naval guns. The island, a verdant chain of coral cliffs and rice paddies, stirred under a sky streaked with the first light of morning. In a makeshift field hospital carved into the hillside near Naha, Japanese nurses huddled amid the acrid scent of antiseptic and damp earth. Their white uniforms, stained with the blood of wounded soldiers, fluttered faintly in the humid breeze seeping through bamboo reinforcements. The ground vibrated with each salvo from the American fleet, a relentless drumbeat that echoed the pounding hearts of those within. Whispers of fear passed between them, eyes wide in the flickering lantern light, as rumors of the invaders' barbarity, tales of ogre beasts who mutilated and ravaged clung to the shadows like smoke. This moment, etched in the annals of the Pacific War, marked the onset of the Battle of Okinawa, the bloodiest confrontation in the theater and a pivotal prelude to the anticipated invasion of Japan's home islands. Codenamed Operation Iceberg, the American assault involved over 180,000 troops from the U.S. Tenth Army, supported by a naval armada of more than 1,300 ships. Okinawa, annexed by Japan in 1879 and home to some 450,000 civilians, was no mere outpost. It lay just 340 miles from Kyushu, making it the final stepping stone for Allied forces aiming to end the war. The Japanese Imperial Army, under Lieutenant General Mitsuru Ushijima, had fortified the island with 100,000 defenders, embedding them in a labyrinth of caves and pillboxes. Civilians, including medical personnel like these nurses, were conscripted into the defense effort, tasked with tending the wounded while bracing for annihilation. Official records from the Japanese War Ministry reveal that propaganda had saturated the population for months, portraying the Americans as demons who would spare no one. Leaflets and radio broadcasts warned of mass executions, with specific fears amplified for women, rape, disfigurement, and enslavement. As U.S. carrier-based aircraft pounded the island since October 1944, displacing tens of thousands into caves, the nurses' role became one of grim endurance, their supplies dwindling to rice balls and rudimentary bandages amid the escalating chaos. For these Japanese nurses, drawn from the ranks of the Imperial Japanese Army's Medical Corps and local auxiliaries, the arrival of the Americans evoked a terror rooted in years of indoctrination. They'd been taught to expect savagery unmatched by human bounds. Accounts from surviving diaries, such as those compiled in post-war interrogations by U.S. military government teams, describe how nurses anticipated the worst. Invaders who would slice off ears and noses, blind captives with bayonets, and crush bodies under tank treads. One nurse, later interviewed by American intelligence, recalled the pervasive dread. "We were told the enemy were Kachikuo gray beasts, not men. Capture meant dishonor worse than death." In the field hospitals where they bandaged shrapnel wounds and administered scarce morphine to screaming soldiers, the nurses steeled themselves for violation or execution. Some clutched cyanide capsules, a stark directive from superiors echoing the mass suicides on Saipan the previous year, where over 8,000 civilians perished rather than surrender. Yet, as U.S. Marines stormed the beaches at Higuchi, the reality unfolded differently. Initial encounters documented in U.S. Naval Institute reports from 1946 revealed trembling civilians emerging from hiding, their faces etched with surprise at the absence of immediate brutality. The contrast pierced through the veil of propaganda like sunlight through storm clouds. Instead of the expected hordes of monsters, the Americans arrived with disciplined restraint. Historical records from the U.S. Army's 10th Army after-action reports note that within days of the landing, over 10,000 civilians, including medical workers, entered Allied lines, many too feeble from cave-dwelling to flee further. Nurses, separated from their units amid the confusion, found themselves in U.S. custody not as victims of atrocity but as recipients of aid. One factual account from a Japanese physician, Dr. Draws Kosaburo Aisaka, practicing in northern Okinawa, captures this shift. The American medical care was a mysterious wonder. Excellent experts and experienced Army and Navy surgeons aided the sick and wounded, providing tobacco, cakes, and care contrasting sharply with the lies we had been fed. In the concentration areas set up by military government detachments, nurses witnessed GIs distributing rations from abundant supplies, a far cry from the starvation rations of the Japanese forces. Data from U.S. records indicate that by late April, 120,000 civilians were under care, with hospitals and dispensaries established to treat maladies like malaria, dysentery, and malnutrition afflictions rampant among the Okinawans due to prior neglect by their own military. Weaving through these encounters was the unassuming presence of a simple Hershey's chocolate bar, a recurring emblem of American abundance that symbolized the democratic ethos of plenty and humanity. In the rubble-strewn aid stations, where nurses once rationed meager rice to the dying, American medics offered these bars rich, creamy confections wrapped in foil, evoking a world of industrial might and shared prosperity. One documented instance, from Marine Corps logs, describes a nurse, her hands still caked in blood from tending Japanese casualties, hesitantly accepting a chocolate bar from a young GI. She stared at it as if it were a relic from another realm, the report notes, highlighting how such gestures dismantled fears. Chocolate, mass-produced in American factories and carried in every soldier's kit, represented not just sustenance but the ideological triumph of a society where resources flowed freely, unbound by the rigid hierarchies that starved Japan's war machine. Nurses, accustomed to the austerity of imperial rationing where a single sweet was a luxury found in these bars, a tangible proof of abundance, melting away layers of suspicion with each shared bite. Factual evidence abounds in the transformation wrought by these interactions. U.S. military government surveys from July 1945 reveal that over 265,000 civilians, comprising more than half the pre-invasion population, were in custody, with mortality estimates of 75,000 to 100,000 from combat and deprivation. Yet those who survived expressed no widespread hatred toward their captors. Instead, as noted in proceedings from the U.S. Naval Institute, the greatest single factor in gaining their goodwill was medical treatment. Nurses, now assisting in integrated field hospitals, observed American doctors treating Japanese wounded alongside Allied troops, a practice alien to their own segregated system. Quotes from Okinawan civilians, preserved in intelligence summaries, echo this: "We expected death but found life in their hands." By mid-campaign, as the battle claimed 12,520 American lives and over 110,000 Japanese, the nurses' perceptions evolved. Fear gave way to a reluctant admiration. Post-war analyses, including those from the U.S. Strategic Bombing Survey, confirmed that propaganda's grip loosened, with civilians turning in hidden Japanese soldiers and cooperating in reconstruction efforts. This emotional chasm between the anticipated horror and the encountered mercy catalyzed a profound ideological shift among the nurses and broader civilian populace. What began as terror of the ogre beasts morphed into recognition of shared humanity, challenging the divine infallibility of the emperor and the racial superiority drilled into them. Historical data from occupation records show that by July, civilians in camps like Ishikawa appeared reasonably happy, engaging in self-sustaining agriculture under U.S. oversight. For the nurses, this meant transitioning from defenders of an empire to healers in a new order. One nurse's anonymous post-war testimony cited in U.S. Army histories reflects, "We saw in their abundance not conquest, but a different way, a path where mercy outweighed might." The Hershey's chocolate bar recurred in these narratives, a symbol handed from GI to nurse in moments of quiet truce, its sweetness underscoring the democratic ideal that resources could uplift rather than oppress. In field hospitals, where penicillin, another marvel of American innovation, saved lives that Japanese medicine could not, the bar became a bridge shared during breaks, evoking reflections on how such plenty stemmed from freedoms absent in their own society. As the battle raged into June, with kamikaze attacks sinking 36 U.S. ships and wounding thousands, the nurses' experiences deepened this change. Captured medical logs reveal that Japanese supplies had run critically low by April, with nurses resorting to boiled rags for bandages. In contrast, American aid stations overflowed with plasma, sulfa drugs, and sterilized instruments, abundance that saved Okinawan lives indiscriminately. Dr. Peirce, Ayusuka's statement further illuminates, the lamentable conditions of starvation and disease were alleviated by these unexpected providers. Nurses, once bound by Bushido's unyielding code, began to question the war's justifications, their ideology fracturing under the weight of kindness. By the island's fall on June 22, with Ushijima's suicide, The surviving nurses integrated into relief efforts, their transformed views seeding post-war reconciliation. The chocolate bar, passed in gestures of goodwill, embodied this shift token of democracy's promise, where individual generosity reflected societal wealth, yet the transformation extended beyond survival, reshaping perceptions of empire and self. In the crowded camps, where 140,000 civilians huddled by war's end, nurses witnessed the dismantling of myths. Japanese forces, far from protectors, had requisitioned food and forced labor, leading to civilian deaths from neglect. U.S. records document 42,000 Okinawan casualties from crossfire. Many preventable had propaganda not driven them into harm's way. One nurse, in a declassified interrogation, admitted, "We fled expecting torture, but found fairness." This ideological pivot, from viewing Americans as subhuman to equals, mirrored broader shifts in Japanese society as occupation spread to the home islands in August. The Hershey's chocolate bar recurring in aid distributions over 1 million rations issued per U.S. reports symbolized this abundance, a stark counter to the scarcity that fueled imperial aggression. Nurses shared these bars with patients, the act fostering bonds that eroded racial barriers, planting seeds of democratic thought amid the ruins. In the epilogue of Okinawa's ordeal, as the sun set on a scarred landscape dotted with craters and silent caves, the nurse's tears born first of terror, then of unexpected grace spoke to a larger truth. Those smiles from American soldiers, accompanied by the simple gift of a chocolate bar, unveiled the essence of freedom, an abundance not hoarded by the few, but shared in the spirit of humanity. In a world ravaged by ideology's chains, where empires rose on the backs of the starved, this democratic plenty illuminated a path forward. The nurses, once guardians of a fading divine order, wept not in defeat but in awakening, realizing that true strength lay not in conquest, but in the open hand extended across divides. Thus, from the ashes of war emerged a reflection on ideology's fragility, how mercy, wrapped in foil and sweetness, could redeem even the deepest fears, binding nations in the enduring promise of shared prosperity.